Is this your association? Do you have an aging membership with no new blood to replace the rock stars as they retire? Do you have members that join to get a one-time benefit but never renew? Or how about products and services like reports, textbooks, and directories that members barely touch? And on top of that, your website is a ghost town. Well, this episode's for you. Hello, everyone. You're watching the Association Amplified podcast. Today, our guest is Christy Devanche. Christy, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Christy is a director of account management at Worker Bee TV, and today we're going to be talking all about the member value gap and why it may be the biggest threat to associations today. So what exactly is the member value gap? Well, I explain it that it is the gap that happens between what associations deliver versus what is the market expectations. Now, what do I mean by market expectations? From a member perspective, are we meeting the expectations of people today and the environment they are in, especially with all the technology at their fingertips? And incidentally, same thing goes for our industry partners. Are we delivering smart options to our sponsors so we can meet them on their priorities, and we're creating value propositions where that match their own expectations? So Christy, I'm interested in your thoughts around this. There's a lot to unpack on this. So maybe like a good place to start would be with the members. So Director of Account Management, you've been working in the association space for a long time. Very closely with all sorts of folks with lots of different goals. So what are some common examples that you see when you're working with your clients in terms of meeting the expectations of today's members?
I think sometimes associations can forget that the newer generations they don't necessarily go, oh yeah, I'm part of this industry, I have to join an association. That's what we do. That's how we meet other people. If you're Gen Z or millennial, you might not get any value just from saying, oh yeah, I'm a member of the marketing association. You actually want a tangible output, something that you can take home or learn. And I think it's really important for associations to keep that in mind, that they're not going to join just for the sake of joining or join just for the sake of meeting people. They're going to want some sort of output, some sort of takeaway.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, what I hear from that is that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, more now than ever, people see associations being a member is something closer to a service. You know, at the end of the day, and I think this is a healthy mindset for any nonprofit, specifically membership-based. Associations need to, and it's the classic question of what's our value proposition, right? And there's so much time and energy and opinions out there of analyzing our value proposition. There's endless webinars, but I think if we just like approach this from a very like empathetic, almost consumer mindset, that it really gets us there a lot quicker, more so even with the younger generation.
Yeah, totally. So if it's going to cost me money, if I'm going to pay you some portion of the money I'm taking home as my salary, I need a benefit. I need to feel like I'm going to move faster in my career. I'm going to have access to information that I wouldn't otherwise have. And if I'm paying you money, association, and I'm not getting those benefits, if it's not clear to me what I'm gaining from being a member, I'm probably going to let that membership lapse. I'm not going to stick around. And beyond that, just to join in the first place, it's going to need to be obvious to me what I'm going to get out of this membership.
Yeah, well said. Maybe it's worth time talking about like traditionally what the association experience is. I can give it a shot at first, but it's something like, congratulations, you have a great opportunity in front of you. Go ahead and make the most of it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. You'll get out what you put in. And, I don't know, we want to get into sort of generalizations about different generations too much here, but I think certain generations maybe had that attitude of like, yeah, I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to try to extract the value from this as much as I possibly can. I'm not sure that appeals as much to today's generations that are like, show me what I'm going to get. Make it easy for me to find value here. Make it easy for me to find the information that I need to succeed in my career.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair ground. Because again, history is like the great context in this, going back to kind of where I led us off the top is there's just more options available. Like if we remove where the internet is at now, right? And just this age of information that we live in, we remove all that, then associations are right back where they were and they go, hey, welcome to the party, make the most of it. Because people just don't have many other options. So you're not under the stress of competition at that point. If we zoom back forward to the current day, there are just so many things competing with associations, right? From the private sector, you have publications that have amazing content strategies and a really solid online presence that is just really well organized, where it's really easy to find, consume, and act on things. And they're doing a great job of pulling together subject matter experts. In other words, it's like they're taking action, right? And we see that more and more where they're, taking the lunch away from association in different niches for our American audiences. I just placed myself. So that is like the great context of all this, and there's so much conversation of like, what does Gen Z want? How do we serve our current members? But again, like if you lead with a certain amount of empathy to what are people's options and just what do they want? I think you just get there a lot faster.
Yeah, absolutely. What you said about the way we live now and the internet and just so much information. If I want information, I can go find it, and I might not need to go to my association to find it. I can probably find it somewhere else, or I might be able to find it somewhere else. And associations cannot lose sight of that. If you aren't providing the information that your members need, they will go looking somewhere else. And if they're successful in finding it somewhere else, you're at risk of losing that member or never getting them to join in the first place. So I think associations need to be hyper-focused on understanding what their members want to know and then making sure they can find it and find it in a way that's engaging and good quality and easy for them to enjoy. With all of this internet full of information and content, you can, like you said, find amazing content to watch. So that's what people expect now.
I wonder if there's like a good example through your experience with working with folks in the association space of just like where the troubles happen or where the disconnect in mindset happen. Is there anything that kind of comes to mind?
Probably, yes. So often, we'll partner with an association client, and when they go to say, it's not just a one-off video or piece of content. If they're trying to put together a series of pieces of content, a podcast, a video series, sometimes they will be a little bit, oh, okay, now I need to come up with 12 episodes, 24 episodes, and feel a bit overwhelmed by that. Whereas I always say, okay, but what do your members want to know right now? What are your members reaching out to you about? What are your members hungry for? Yeah. Because that's where you have to start. You have to start with what your members need to know, what they're desperate to learn more about. And if you do that, you're always going to have content that they're looking for. I think sometimes I've seen associations start from the place of, oh, well, I know I can book this person, and this person to come on and talk. And then they figure out what that person could talk about. And they haven't started from the right place. They haven't started with their member and thinking about what their member wants to learn about and then matching their guest to that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We're in the association space, it's always the answer should be member centric, right? And just by actively listening to what the members want, we can close in and get some good feedback. But I would even take a step back further that most associations actually have the bulk of the information to get started with a content strategy and get the ball rolling. And it's perhaps the way we traditionally work inside of the association space that just creates a little bit of disconnect, especially inside of departments. It's funny, like, just a few weeks ago, we were sitting down with an organization, a lovely association. And, once we got everyone into a room and we got the conversation going, and we started asking them about, well, what do you think is popular? Like, what do you get good feedback on? And we had all these departments in one place. It's like the opinions just started going and the conversations kept happening. But at the beginning of that conversation, there is a lot of empty faces and shrugs. It's like, well, I don't know what we really should be talking about. Well, by just going through and having a bit of a process and reflecting at what has been popular at events, what's been popular as far as like a resource that you currently have, you're able to then identify, if I'm going to put on my marketing hat, and I know I said this before, but you can create what are the pillar topics of your organization, right? And then just think of them as bullet points, taking marketing hat off. What are like if you had to distill the well of information that you think is relevant to people today, and I'm forcing you to make it into 10 bullet points, is that possible? Well, from 10 bullet points, you could expand out endlessly. You could take those 10 bullet points to your board. I'm sure they'll be able to give you a big amount of feedback in terms of what are the different topics that come out of that, or certainly your members.
So I think you hit on something really important in your answer about the need for collaboration between departments and associations. I think often when I'm working with associations, I get sort of connected to one person in one department, and I will often try to ask questions about, what are the objectives of your other departments in terms of communicating to your members? What do you know from talking to your colleagues about what your members need right now? And sometimes I'm surprised to find a lack of collaboration within an association. And I think you are really doing your members a disservice if you're not collaborating and communicating as a team within your organization to make sure that the needs of one sort of department aren't outweighing the needs of another. Think about the members. What do the members need? Not what does your department need to communicate? And I think with that in mind, you'll have a much sort of stronger way to communicate with your membership and feel much more connected to your membership in the way that you communicate to them.
Yeah, that's well said. I could almost distill that down into like more than one surprising quote, but I'll use one. And that was, oh, I didn't know we had a podcast.
Yeah.
Like that's rough, right? There's a real disconnect there. And there's no escaping the fact that it is common that associations end up working in silos.
Yes, it's so common. And, I not throwing shade on associations. We are also, a business, and sometimes we work in silos, and it can be really easy to get like your blinders on and your heads down, and you have your goal and your boss said you have to get this one thing done, do it. I can relate to that deeply. But if you're somebody in a position to make a difference within an association, try to take that step back out of your silo, your head down moment to think about what's going on as a whole for your membership to make sure that you're not losing sight of that.
Yeah, it's well said. I mean, it goes back to what's happening as your competitors. Let me rephrase that. What's happening from your competitors and what's preventing you from taking action, right? If you're an association leader out there, can you honestly look back at your association and say, hey, I have a unified team that's all serving up to a common goal, right? I think when everyone can be honest that you have a cohesive team, then you're one step closer to having a strategy that lands on member value. So with that, I mean, let's go back to the beginning. The gap is, are you able to provide value to your members in the way that they expect it? And that is just reducing the amount of work it takes to get to the heart of the value proposition. It's so often that we find associations, again, going back to that department structure, just everything is kind of in its own space, in its own different website. And we don't have to get into solutions in this conversation. Obviously, Worker BTV, we specifically design solutions for this, but like getting back to the member experience, if your members have to jump through hoops to find your value, then you're just doing yourself a disservice, and you're diluting all that time and energy you put into your initiatives.
Yeah, 100%. And that, sort of different departments jumping onto their own microsite and doing their own thing, I think it's just a short-sighted approach to getting the information to your members. It might be easier and faster to not have to work with your marketing team if your marketing team has other priorities. But if you haven't put your message together in a way that makes sense with what everyone else is doing, you're going to leave your members feeling lost and confused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Especially, again, when it comes back to competitors, that they can go to a single destination. I'll go back to events competitors and publications, and more those are actually becoming the same company. You'll have a competitor that's niched down into your own industry, and they're putting out a publication or a journal, and they'll have an annual trade show conference that's pulling together the whole industry, providing subject matter experts. And what are they doing at that event? They're milking it for everything they're worth. And where do you find it? They'll package it all tightly on their website, and you arrive there and you go like, oh, okay. Like, wow. If you're a person that's a professional in that space per se, like, I'm home, in other words, and that's the opportunity. And in some ways, just the actual advantage that associations really need to unlock today is that if you can't say, I'm being the authority and I'm doing a great job of pulling together the conversation and the common things that these folks are looking for their professional development, then we can, which is a good thing to land on, because now you can say, okay, we're going to take action. Let's develop a plan, take action, and how are we going to facilitate this exchange of information? How are we going to educate people? How are we going to keep them informed? And, to our point earlier, it's like, how do we make that as easy as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you in my own career, I attended a conference for account managers. It wasn't put on by an association. It was put on by a software company that makes software for account managers.
Great example.
And they did an amazing job of lining up speakers, hitting on really important topics. When I think about what do I need to be better at in my job, this conference promised to make me better at the things that are most important to me: strategic review meetings with my clients, measuring success, all of these things. They had packaged it all up for me, and they pulled me in. And how did they pull me in? They started with webinars, and they had webinars about, how to get your clients to show up to strategic review meetings. And I'm like, ooh, I need to know that. I like it when my clients show up.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's maybe spend some time on content strategy before we move on to industry partners and sponsors. Really at the heart of what we're circling around is, okay, we know that we need to meet today's members' expectations. We know that expectations have changed, right? There's just there's more pressure on associations just by what the prospective member has at their fingertips, as well as just the large amount of competition, or ever growing amount of competition out there. So how do we get started? Like, what is going to facilitate closing that gap? And there's no escaping having a content strategy and in this day and age, especially for associations. But like, let's zoom out. I mean, every organization is jumping on board and having a content strategy, because in a lot of ways it's your communication strategy, it's your membership strategy, it's your marketing strategy, right? That's what content strategy is, especially for associations, is you're pulling together, and I shouldn't leave out your business development strategy, right? It's just so much of what we how should I say this, is that so much of how we think about association as being individual departments, the member unfortunately does not care or think about departments. They're just on the receiving end of that value proposition that you had. So just wondering if you have any thoughts.
Content strategy, important. Definitely on the same page with you there. And what I find when I work with clients is often I will talk to them about, okay, you have this goal this year to sort of increase member engagement. That's always almost what a client says. We want better engagement from our members. Okay, so how are you doing that right now? And they almost always tell me they have a content calendar, but the content calendar will often have things in it like promoting their event, promoting their webinars, items like that, and not with that member focus that starts with their content pillars, as you touched on earlier. So sometimes I worry that associations are sort of ticking that box. Yeah, we have a content strategy, we have a content calendar, but they're not putting the member first in that content strategy and thinking from those content pillars of what their members really need to learn about and what they really need to know about. Sometimes they're putting their own association objectives ahead of that. Our objective is to increase registration for our event. Therefore, we have our event-based communications in our content calendar. So that's one thing I would really, if you're an association professional, challenge you to think about. Is your content calendar about your members or is it about you?
Oh, this is amazing. Yeah. If we're going to have a content strategy or we will go back to our content calendar, so we're looking at actually what we're doing as we go through the rows, is this member centric or is this just trying to get through, what we're targeting that we're going to get accomplished this year? Yeah, really well said. It all needs to trickle back up to is this good for the member or is this going to translate into just feeding into a responsibility that we set out for ourselves this year? I think a good strategy is when those things overlap quite a bit, right? And in some ways, that's the biggest advantage of having a good content strategy is that you can tick the boxes on individual goals for your departments, and they all ladder up to being useful, valuable to the member.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not to say you shouldn't promote your annual event. Absolutely, you should promote 100%. Your annual event.
100%.
But the bulk of your content calendar shouldn't be about, your association's kind of goals for hitting, event attendance and things like that. It's got to come back to some pieces of education. Yeah. And we haven't talked a ton about the sponsorship piece in this, but if you also think about what your sponsors need or what your sponsors want, they don't want to kind of be that like little tag at the end of the event video. They want to be an authority part of your education strategy and have those opportunities to contribute in that way. So if you don't have a content calendar to show your sponsors, they don't know what they're signing up for. They don't know what they're going to be a part of. So it's really important from that perspective as well.
Yeah, and we could definitely transition into that. So as far as a content calendar goes, what is the opportunity to increase our value proposition to our industry partners with a well-executed content strategy?
I mean, the opportunity is huge. I personally, when I kind of joined Worker BTV and started understanding what we offered to our association clients, I thought back to all of the sort of sponsorship activations I'd done as a media buyer, and I was like, I would have killed for this. Yeah. I would have loved to be able to say to my boss, I booked you a spot to go speak about an area of expertise, and it's going to get blasted out on all of these emails. It's going to be featured on a channel. It's going to be in all these different places, and look at all the exposure we're getting you. Oh, and P.S., I'm going to report back to you on how many people watched it, how long they watched it for, how many people went to the page and clicked on our banner. Yeah. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's bring it back to the gap. So what is the gap in what did you just speak to, which meets today's expectations? Buyers have more options than ever, right? And like I mentioned earlier, is that there's more pressure on buyers than ever before to translate their dollars to tangible outcomes. Right. So simple brand awareness, being able to put a logo on a lanyard or at a dinner, that's just becoming less and less appealing. There's a place for it, But if you're able to combine brand awareness with, hey, sponsor, not only are you gonna be front and center at the gala, but I have these options for you to actually contribute with your competency into the conversation that's happening inside of our association. Come be a subject matter expert. We know that your whole firm is experts in this. We want want you to speak about what you think is important on this topic, for instance. That is such a profoundly attractive offer for an industry partner compared to just simple brand awareness.
Yes. And I think this is something associations really need to be prepared for, and that, potentially the people who were buying up sponsorships in the past, as new people are coming into that space, they're going to be looking for more innovative offerings of different ways of showing return, like you said, for the dollars that they're spending. And I think the days of sort of like copy pasting your media plan from the previous year and picking up your print ads and your lanyard sponsorship, those days are going to be sunsetting behind us. It's already started. We know most associations, magazines are selling less and less ad space. Your ad buyers want something new, and this piece of content marketing, having a content calendar, all of it is going to be so important in the future to bringing value and attracting new sponsorship dollars.
Yeah, and from a strategic sense, like when you're able to put a media kit together that has like this different blend of options to it, from traditional print advertising, maybe your website, you have an option where their logo is appearing at certain sections, all the way up into actually contributing to the content calendar. Being able to incorporate that into your media kit, you're able to just hit check a lot of boxes, and it changes it from being a very transactional offer that you're going to a buyer with, hey, do you want to sponsor the gala? That's a one and done. Where if you actually apply what we're saying into a content strategy, right? Now you can create an opportunity for that sponsor to contribute all year long, right? And now you're chasing something close to annual reoccurring revenue from that great corporate sponsor.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the sponsor themselves, like they don't want that flash in the pan exposure of, okay, we were plastered all over this gala, everybody left the gala, and maybe now they have no memory of who sponsored it. If they have that opportunity to be sort of featured in your content more regularly, featured on your website more regularly, in your newsletters, then their stickiness with your membership is going to be higher too, which is more value to them, not to mention a lot easier for them to measure.
Yeah, absolutely. And to bring it back to pressure in the market, those buyers, again, they have more and more options at their disposal. So is your value proposition, is your selection of options for them are going to compete with, well, not only the options just available out there in the technology, but is it going to compete with, hey, that publication company that has, some content marketing associated with it at their annual event, right? Oh, now I get to buy brand awareness, right? I get to plaster my logo, a little bit of messaging, but I actually get to be in some sort of media and really get my message out, put like my rock star person talking about our innovation or our technology. Like who's gonna turn that down compared to a lesser like a more basic offering, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's something that's critically important when we, again, to go back into the member value gap.
Yes, definitely critically important in the member value gap too, because often your sponsors have a lot of information that your members want. So if, depending on what your industry is, your sponsors might have knowledge about new products coming onto the market that your members need, and they might be actually the very best place, the very best source of that information. And if you're not providing those opportunities to them, you're not only doing yourself a disservice in your ability to bring in sponsorship dollars, but you're actually doing your members a disservice too, because they want that information and they're looking for somewhere to find it. And you are a trusted, vetted source. So I know that content marketing or this type of sponsorship sometimes can feel a little bit uncomfortable for associations, but I think you need to use your expertise, use all of the systems you have in place to pick the right sponsors, pick the right partners to convey those messages, and trust in your ability to discern what's valuable information to your members and to pick the right partners to do that with you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something like we all want to be able to call a spade and have that communicated when appropriate. What do I mean by that? Well, if we have a good product or service out there from a supplier and hey, they're going to say like this product is the best product, this service is the best service. Like there's a good time and place to put that where everyone understands that, hey, this is promotional material, right? This is just straight advertising. They're trying to evangelize for their product being the best. Everyone's on the same board, right? And that creates an opportunity for the sponsor to get their message out there. And the member isn't confused. They understand that this is the sponsor just trying to market their product. Hey, we have these features, these collection of features give you this benefit. We think you should take a look. That's not offensive when it's communicated clearly and at the right place and time.
Totally. And honestly, looking at analytics on client platforms and seeing like how these sponsored videos do versus the client's own or the association's own in-house produced content, sometimes we're seeing the sponsored content outperform the association content. And I can go down a whole nother path of the type of content the association might want to be producing instead. But that isn't the main point I'm making, is that people want this information. And this association that has people actively watching the videos their sponsors are putting out, they're really having the best of both worlds for themselves and for their members, because their members are getting the information they want and they're collecting the sponsorship dollars because the sponsors are getting great exposure.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't hard to imagine. There's so many industries where keeping up with innovation is just a part of the job, right? It's a part of running a good company, is understanding where things are at with the innovation and, the ever-growing expression of technology and, the solution landscape for business and even on a personal professional level. So to think that people aren't going to get that information out somewhere else, if you're not going to provide it, you're kind of lying to yourself. We're all addicted to understanding what technologies are and what innovations that are coming out. So it's just a matter of capturing it and placing it in the right place at the right time. So, those that are looking for those kind of answers and that kind of information, they know where to find it and they know what they're looking at. Now, I want to spend a moment to talk about where I think it gets a bit crossed, is that we can have content where the industry partner is, say, doing a product demo, right? And where the associate is just facilitating having that, say, on their website, which is where it should be. The other opportunity for associations is where they can leverage industry partners as subject matter experts. And I think that's where perhaps you even get some feedback of like, okay, where's that line? Like, how are we going to be hold our own responsibilities as an authoritative organization to do this in a way that is not, let's be big here, mistreating that relationship with the member.
Right. Yes, this is definitely a common objection. And I think what associations should be keeping in mind is that, they have the final say in what goes out, and it's not, their sponsor showing up and just talking about whatever they want to talk about. There's a whole process that sits around it, talking to you, like if you're the sponsor, Marcus, what are your areas of expertise? You share a few things and you say, okay, I'm really comfortable with you talking about items 1 and 2, but in item 3, you're sort of veering too far into your own sales pitch. So let's just really focus this effort around items 1 and 2. And then you're like, okay, great. And me as the association, I have some control over what's going out. I'm not totally giving up control just because I'm working with a sponsor. And particularly if they come in eyes wide open about it being an education piece, not a sales pitch, then you can work together to find something that's really going to serve your members.
Yeah, that's really well said. I mean, a big part of it is just setting expectations, right? You want to participate in this opportunity? Well, these are the guidelines. This is what we're here for. We're not here to speak specifically about a solution that you have. We're here to perhaps talk about a problem, right? Or more generally, talk about a technology, for instance. And frankly, as like someone that was a big buyer in a former life, if you were to tell me, hey, I can get you in front of your audience and you get to look like a big smarty pants, and that whole audience is just 100% your target market, you just get to go and display your competency, right? And be an authority. Like, that's so much of what it means to do good marketing these days. The appetite in the industry, in the market more widely is 100% there.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, we spent a lot of time kind of dissecting this problem and understanding a little bit further. Let's bring it back all the way around to a good summary of what we're getting to here today. And I think the best way that I could describe it to everyone at home is that there is so much of a conversation of how we're not creating a good value proposition for members. How are we not creating a good value proposition for our sponsors? How are we not growing these key areas in our organization? And there is just a gap that is happening there. And it's something like, just like we mentioned earlier, meeting changing expectations. How do you go about thinking about this?
You captured it well in terms of, the gap in what the newer generation of members is expecting versus what they are getting. And associations, I think, some associations haven't caught up to what their new members are expecting. And what they expect is value they can easily extract almost immediately. And I think that's what associations need to be focused on.
All right, Christy, thanks for coming on the podcast. Really enjoyed the conversation. Always appreciate your insights.
Thanks, Marcus. It's been a ton of fun. I'm glad I could join you today.
All right, that's our show. Thank you to all the viewers for joining us. If you want to learn more about how to amplify your association's relevance and growth, check us out at workerbee.tv.